Hello everybody, this is chapter 16 of Rubyfruit Jungle. I didn't break off with Polina right away. I guess I needed her too much. The conversations, the theater, and her stories of Europe where she grew up. I tried to ignore the sex, but Polina was getting more and more into it. It hit rock bottom for me when she wanted to be told she was a golden shower queen. Paulina had saved her urine in empty glass macadamia nut jars for me to admire while I told her the story of her mighty pissing powers and yet another fantasy men's John. No way I could hack that. I asked her if maybe we could be friends, and she nearly had a coronary. Friends? What do you mean, friends? Here I am on the threshold of powerful sexual discoveries, and you want to be friends? I tried to tell her to find other women, but she wanted me. She wanted me, but she was ashamed of me. She wouldn't introduce me to her friends or let me come by for her at work. Afraid I'd flash a lavender neon L between my tits, I suppose. More out of loneliness than love, I stayed with her. My classes at school were all men, and they had it in for me, since I was doing better than they were. Of all careers, I thought film would be somewhat open, but their pathetic egos had bloated to outrageous proportions behind a small Arriflex, and they resented a woman who could compete on their territory and, worse, win. The bars weren't a hotbed of intellectual ferment, even though I had found some nice ones uptown where the merest hint of rolls would have frozen you out. Rules were for truck drivers to these women, but I could only take so many conversations where big names were dropped like napalm to inflame your brain with admiration. I don't give a shit who you know. I care about what you do. These high-class dollies weren't doing much, but I couldn't go back to the sleazy colony or Sugars where the bulls still put butch hair wax on their crew cuts. So there was Paulina for all her fantasies, a seemingly better choice than any of the others. It was Alice who resolved the problem. The three of us would go out from time to time. I was too dangerous for her friends, but I was good enough for her daughter. Paulina's doublethink was astounding. She encouraged my bond with Alice. We were closer in age than Paulina and I were, which wouldn't have made a difference if Paulina didn't harp about her age constantly. Alice was only 6 years younger than I was. I began to feel guilty for being born in 1944. The old lady, as she referred to herself, looked down her nose at our music, the films we shared, and the magazines we read. She was not above patronizing either one of us for our years and our tastes, which drew Alice and I closer together, as generational hostility always does. Alice knew her mother and I were lovers, and she thought it was great. She also knew about Paul and considered him the original human slug. One yellow acid drizzled day, she confessed. You know Mom wants to sleep with me? Oh, yeah? She won't admit it, but I know she does. I think I'd like to sleep with her. She's very good looking, you know. Too bad it would freak her out. Incest doesn't seem like such a trauma to me. Me neither, but then I can't really say much about that because I didn't grow up with my real parents. But I never have been able to figure out why parents and children put each other in these desexed categories. It's anti-human, I think. Yeah, parents get freaked out about everything. Mom must have a heavy case of repression going because she'll never deal with the fact that she digs my body. She's got more going than that. Oh yeah? What's the old girl cooking up? Nothing. Just don't sleep with your mother. I'm not against incest if both parties consent and are over 15, but your mother is on her own weird trip. Tell me her trip. No, I don't kiss and tell. Oh, Molly, why do you have to have morals? Because I don't have money. How are your morals when it comes to sleeping with me? I'm jailbait, you know. Alice, your spirit of romance is so delicate, moves me to tears. Please sleep with me. I feel like I can trust you. You won't get into a big, heavy thing about it, you know? I know, but what about your mother? What she doesn't know won't hurt her. Alice giggled and slipped me a sly look. I'll give you one perfect yellow rose for your sunshine soul, and then will you sleep with me? For one perfect yellow rose, yes. Alice jogged down Broadway looking for a florist's shop, ran inside a tiny one, and emerged, rose in hand. Off we went to 17th Street, to the cockroaches in the steam heat that never steamed. But Alice steamed and shook inside, and she hadn't one sexual quirk in her mind. She loved being touched, and she loved touching back. Kissing was an art form to her. She was there, all there, with no hang-ups, no stories to tell, just herself. And I was just me. Alice's survival instincts were sound. She knew we'd have to sneak around to see each other more often. Paulina's warped Victorian mentality would get water-soaked if she read our beads. When the three of us were out together, it was a unique form of torture. Once in the balcony watching Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, Paulina held my left hand while Alice played with my right thigh. The play made no impression on me at all, but I clapped wildly at the end to let off all that trapped energy. Paulina threw us together, hoping it would happen, yet terrified of it at the same time. Somehow I was a sexual go-between for both of them. I was a kind of telestar for them to bounce messages off to each other. There were times when I felt lonelier with them than without them. One Saturday afternoon, looking out over Harlem and hearing the steady drums from the park, mother and daughter entered a time-honored fight. Paulina accused Alice of behaving like a child over some trivial item, and Alice replied that Paulina was suffering from hardening of the arteries, specifically in her head. This kind of cheerful banter went on until Alice, in a fit of untried ego, hit her oldest competitor. "I'm not a baby anymore. For Christ's sake, Mother, I'm old enough to be making it with your lover. So dig it and get off my back." "My what?" "Molly and I are lovers." Paulina recoiled. She fumed in Italian and rattled so fast all I could catch was "Basta! Basta!" and a slap across the face. When her streak of bilingualism petered out, she ordered me out of her life and Alice's life forever in unmistakable English. Alice protested, but Paulina curbed that strike with the threat that she wouldn't send Alice to college if Alice persisted in this relationship. Alice was a shrewd sort, and she had no intention of working her way through college, especially after contact with my life. She bowed to her mother's superior material force, and I gracefully exited to 17th Street, where the hounds of hell gnawed at my ankles, and the water bugs organized a safari through my kitchen. I dreamed of sewer lagoons underneath the skyscrapers, where I could navigate a Con Edison raft to take me out of this crazy city with its crazy people. Give me one sharp pull to fight off the blind alligators thrown into the drain pipes by people who bought them as babies and trips to Miami Beach. Miami Beach, so close to Carrie with her crotons, Ixura, and blind pride. Miami Beach, where the geriatric generation buys sequined colostomy bags to match their shoes. Even if I made it through the drain pipes to the Intercoastal, I couldn't land there. There is no place to go. Here I am in the hanging gardens of neon, hustling my ass for a degree and living in shit. Shit worse than Shiloh, and damn, is there one person in Manhattan who isn't a radiated disaster area? Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the disaster area. Or am I still full of Dunkard ways and simple dreams? Maybe I belong in the foothills of Pennsylvania, where the Mennonites and the Amish, and how the hell can I make movies out there? You can't even have electric light bulbs out there. In Logic 101, this is called being on the horns of a dilemma. Either way, you get gored. But if I had money, maybe I could slip out of that dilemma. I mean, if I had money, I wouldn't be at the mercy of chance, peanut intellects, and amputated emotions so much. With money, you can protect yourself, but getting it is another story. One more year and I'll be out of school. An instant fortune. Oh, sure, I can slip into the cracks of the pavement because no one will hire me. Shit. Well, I'm not giving up, but I'd like to rest every now and then. I'd like to see the hills of Shiloh again and lay my body down in the meadow behind Epps' place, out where they buried Jenna. Maybe the smell of the clover will get me through one more winter in this branch of hell. Maybe I can keep myself together with a day in the country. There's still no price on the sun. I hit the road and hitched to Philadelphia. There I got picked up by a truck driver of the male variety who tried to feel me up when I fell asleep, but I snarled at him and he withdrew his offending paw. He dropped me off at the bus station in Lancaster. After an hour's wait in the hazy lethargy of the Greyhound terminal, I boarded the bus. With a rumble it roared off, farting thick black pollution in its wake, fouling the low green hills of southeastern Pennsylvania. The hills were also fouled with huge billboards advertising Tanya and Ford and saying, "Drink milk, it's nature's perfect food." Every now and then I could catch a glimpse of the countryside through the thickets of advertising. Once in York, I had to catch 2 buses, but I finally got to Shiloh. The green bus stopped in front of Mrs. Hirschner's and I jumped out. Same old screen door, same tar paper shavings in the drive. The porch was half decayed and the Nehi sign had been changed to 7 Up, the young cola, but those were the only signs of 15 years of progress. The road down to Epps' place was still dirt with a few blue stones thrown on it to pretend it would be serviceable in the rains. The sun was high over my head and milk-white butterflies chased butter-yellow ones over June grass and plowed earth. I took a deep breath of air and got higher than orange sunshine could ever get me. My feet took off and carried my body down the road. I was running and pumping and pushing those legs that damn near had shin splints from all that New York City pavement. Pretty soon I was waving my arms and yelling that there wasn't one face to look at me and think, "What's that nut doing?" There was nobody in sight, just the butterflies. Around the bend, down the hill, there was the old frame house. Wash was on the line, and the house had a fresh coat of white paint. I went up to the door out of breath and knocked, but no one was home. Good, because I didn't feel like asking anybody if I could go rest by their pond. And the little patch of concrete by the front porch where the 2 pennies stuck in there when Leroy and I started first grade. Long as we got those 2 cents, Carrie would say, we ain't broke. The rabbit pens were gone, and the pig wallow had been planted with pansies and fandango petunias. The pond was the same old pond. The edge was rimmed with green slime, and tall grass full of frogs' eggs jutted from the still water. Foam gathered around the tall grass. I dropped down by the pool, put my arms behind my head, and watched the clouds. After a while the insects and birds took me for a rock. A caterpillar bumped across my left elbow, and a mockingbird was careful to shit on my foot. I opened my eyes, slowly turned my head, and stared straight into the eyes of the biggest goddamn frog I'd ever seen. That frog wasn't scared of me. That frog was defiant. It stared at me, blinked, then puffed up a red-pink throat and let out a croak that would have delivered Jericho. From the other side of the pond came a returning belch, and 2 little green heads peeked out of the water to investigate this mammal on the shore. Amphibians must think we're inferior creatures since we can't go in and out of the water the way they can. Besides being biologically superior, that old frog is more together than I am. That frog doesn't want to make movies. That frog hasn't even seen movies, and furthermore, that frog doesn't give a big damn. It just swims, eats, makes love, and sings as it pleases. Who ever heard of a neurotic frog? Where do humans get off thinking they're the pinnacle of evolution? As if to let me know what it thought of my cognitive processes, the Goliath let out a mighty bellow and flew straight up in the air, terrifying a dragonfly cruising at low altitude. Its 4 feet touched earth. It hurled itself back into the air and landed in the pond with a truly heroic splash that soaked half my shirt. I sat up and watched the ripples race each other to the edge, where they were lost in the scum. Then I saw its huge head pop out of the weeds. That damn frog winked at me. I got up, brushed myself off, and trotted down by the gully, through the drain pipe and out the other side, and started up the road to Leota's old house. I congratulated myself on being small enough and skinny enough to slip through the drain pipe. Mrs. Bisland was still living in that house. The shrubs had grown, and it had aluminum siding, but other than that, it looked the same. She looked pretty much the same, too, except now she was completely gray. She was surprised to see me, fussed over me, and asked how Carrie was and how sorry she was to hear about Carl passing on back there in 61. Did I know Leota had married Jackie Phantom, who owns a body shop right out in West York, and they're doing real good? She gave me their address on Diamond Street, and I trudged back to Mrs. Hirschner's, went in, and bought a raspberry ice cream cone. The lady behind the counter told me Mrs. Hirschner hung herself 3 years ago, and not a soul knew why. Mrs. Bisland called Leota because she was looking for me. I didn't have time to knock on the door before it opened, and there was Leota. Same cat eyes, same languid body. But oh God, she looked 45 years old, and she had 2 brats hanging on her like possums. I looked 24. She saw herself in my reflection, and there was a flicker of pain in her eyes. Molly, come in. This is Jackie Jr., and this is Margie, named for my mother. Say hello to the lady. Jackie Jr. at 5 could say hello with a reasonable degree of accuracy, but Margie hung back. I think she'd never seen a woman in pants before. Hello, Margie. Hello, Jackie. Now, Jackie, take your sister out in the back and play. I don't want to take her out and play. I want to stay here with you. Do as you're told. No. He pouted until he near tripped over his lip. Leota slammed him one on the back, collared him out the door, and the screams didn't die down for 20 minutes. They drive me crazy sometimes, but I love them. Sure, I said. What else can I say? Every mother says the same thing. What brings you to York? Thought I'd take a day out of the big city. Big city? You aren't in Florida? Oh, that's right. I believe I did hear from Mother that you'd gone up to New York. Aren't you afraid you'll get killed in the streets? All them Puerto Ricans and niggers? No. There was an awkward silence. Not that whites can't be violent, too. But you're up there where all kinds of people are bunched together. I'm not prejudiced, you understand. I understand. Are you married yet? Don't you remember? I told you when we were kids that I was never getting married. I kept my promise. Oh, you just haven't met the right man. Nervous laugh. Right. Everybody says that, but it's a load of shit. Her face registered the obscenity, but a faint hint of admiration played at the corners of her mouth. I married Jack right out of high school. I wanted to get out of the house, and that was the only way. But I loved him, too. He's a good husband. Works hard, loves the kids. I couldn't ask for more. You should see Carol Morgan. She married Eddie Harper, remember him? He was 2 years ahead of us. He drinks himself sick. I was lucky. I looked at the neat little house with plastic covers on the furniture and ceramic lamps. The kitchen had a tabletop full of kidney shapes and thin lines over the formica, and there was a bunch of plastic mums as a centerpiece. The living room was an oasis of avocado wall-to-wall carpeting. Leota would have shuddered to see my milk cartons. Jackie Jr. either shut up or developed an early case of throat cancer, because at last we could lower our voices. Would you like coffee or soda or something? Coke. She went into the kitchen and pulled out of an enormous decorator brown refrigerator a 16-ounce Coke. As she walked back to hand it to me, I noticed her body had lost its coiled suppleness and she dragged a bit. Her breast sagged and her hair was dull. What are you doing up there in the big city? Finishing up at NYU. I'm in filmmaking. She was so impressed. Are you going to be a movie star? You look a little like Natalie Wood, you know. Thank you for the compliment, but I don't think I'm movie star material. I want to make the movies, not be one of the pawns in them. Oh. She couldn't say any more because it was a mysterious process, and all she saw in the end were the movie stars anyway. Leota, have you ever thought about that night we spent together? Her back stiffened and her eyes receded. No, never. Sometimes I do. We were so young, and I think we must have been kind of sweet. I don't think about those kinds of things. I'm a mother. What does that do? Shut down the part of your brain that remembers the past? I'm too busy for that stuff. Who has time to think? Anyway, that was perverted, sick. I haven't got time for it. I'm sorry to hear that. Why did you ask me that? Why'd you come back here? To ask me that? You must have stayed that way. Is that why you're walking around in jeans and a pullover? You one of those sickies? I don't understand it. I don't understand it at all, a pretty girl like you. You could have lots of men. You have more choices than I did here in this place. I thought you said you liked your husband. I love my husband, love my children. That's what a woman is made for. It's just you living in a big city and being educated. You can marry a doctor or a lawyer or even someone in TV. Leota, I will never marry. You're crazy. A woman's got to marry. What's going to happen to you when you're 50? You gotta grow old with somebody. You're going to be sorry. I'm going to be arrested for throwing an orgy at 99, and I'm not growing old with anybody. What a gruesome thought. Christ, you're 24 and you're worried about being 50? That makes no sense. Makes all the sense in the world. I have to think about security. I have to save our money and plan ahead for the children's educations and our retirement. I didn't get an education, and I want to be sure the kids get them. You could go to school if you wanted to. There are community colleges and all that. I'm too old. Got too much to do. I don't think I can sit in a classroom and learn anymore. It's fine that you're doing it. I admire you for it. You can meet a lot of people that way, and someday you'll meet the right one and settle down. You just wait. Let's stop this shit. I love women. I'll never marry a man, and I'll never marry a woman either. That's not my way. I'm a devil-may-care lesbian. Leota took her breath in sharply. You ought to have your head examined, girl. They put people like you away. You need help. Yes, I know people like you who put people like me away. Before you call down the acolytes of heterosexual inquisition, I'm splitting. Don't go using those big words on me, Molly Bolt. You always were a smartass. Yeah, and I was your first lover, too. I slammed the door and was down the street by the car lot. She could have died on the spot for all I know. Now to retrace my steps to Babylon on the Hudson. Back to the place where the air destroys your lungs and the football behind you might belong to the hand that slits your throat. Back to where glitzy Broadway hosts the suburbs nightly and calls it the theater. Back to where slick glossies pounce on flesh and serve it up monthly to the nation's subscription cannibals. Back to where millions of us live side by side in rotting honeycombs and never say hello. Polluted, packed, putrid. It's the only place where I have any room, any hope. I got to go back and stick it out. At least in New York City, I can be more than a breeder of the next generation. That was 16. Wow, I can't believe how Leota turned out. It's really sad. And another level of sadness is that she's turned into one of those self-righteous heterosexuals, just like so many other characters we've seen. Now, I'm going to let you guys in on the fact that there's only 2 more chapters after this. So in light of that, what do you think is going to happen? I think Molly's going to graduate, and then what? What does her love life have in store? Was there anything surprising to you in this chapter? I was kind of surprised at the incest bit, and I'm wondering if that's going to be resolved, or if Paulina and her daughter are totally out of the book from now on. I guess we'll find out. There was a phrase I really liked in this chapter. It was, let me see if I can find it. I remember what it looked like on the page, but it was before that. I am going to attempt to quickly look at this painfully. I don't know why I just said the word painfully. I think I'm just reading something. Let's see. I found it. When Molly started sleeping with Alice, who was Paulina's daughter, and then they had to go out to the theater together. Well, actually, before the theater specifically, she was talking about when the 3 of us were together, because now that you think about it, Molly's sleeping with both of them. And Molly says, when the 3 of us were out together, it was a unique form of torture. That's what I was thinking about. A unique form of torture. Do you have anything you could describe as a unique form of torture? I'd be very interested to know. Molly is so headstrong in this chapter. It's amazing. Like, she knows when she can't deal with people anymore. Like, she just up and left Leota's house. I really admire Molly. I want to know if you guys admire her too. What do you think are her positive qualities, and what do you think are her negative qualities? Let's talk about everything in the comments below. Thank you so much for listening, and I've had so much fun reading this book to you guys. I'm kind of sad that it's almost done, but that means I'll be on to something new. I don't think I'm going to be reading Eden anymore. I have to return that to the library soon, and those chapters are ridiculously long. I practically got laryngitis from reading that one time. All right. Well, thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye.